I swear, doll customizing is the weirdest art form ever. What's up, party people? My daughter's 11th birthday was on Thursday. So, for her birthday, I am going to be customizing a doll for her and turning it into one of her favorite characters from anime. Now, the doll that I'm working on is one that I thrifted, and it took me a little bit of time to figure out what this character was, but it turns out it's the Lucky doll from Spirit. And I think it's an animated series, not the original movie, but I'm not sure. I haven't really been following Disney stuff in recent years. Anyway, I grabbed this doll just because she was great. She had a lot of articulation in her joints, and I really liked her facial features for the project that I was going to be working on. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But what I was not aware of when I grabbed this doll was how hard her head was going to be. She is not like a Monster High doll or Ever After doll. The vinyl for her head is rock solid. So I had to do some extra surgery in order to finish prepping the doll base and get all the hair out. Also, because her head was so hard, and because it had this teeny tiny little neck peg, it had broken the neck when I took her apart. So I had to do some repairs later. I do absolutely love prepping doll heads. It is so satisfying wiping off all the factory paint with pure acetone, and just getting that doll back to the blank. Once I had everything stripped down, I decided to go ahead and reattach the head now. I did not want to risk cracking the face up because the head was so hard. So I stuck it back on the teeny tiny little net peg and sealed it back up with some super glue. Now it is time to talk about design. My daughter is obsessed with the Promised Neverland. I don't know if it's because the main characters are 11 and she's about to be 11, or if it's because she's a twisted child deep in her soul, but she loves the Promised Neverland and Emma is her favorite character. So I figured if I were going to make her an anime-inspired repaint doll, it was going to have to be Emma from the Promised Neverland. I started off by making yarn wefts for my beautiful bright orange anime hairstyle, and I also pulled out for the first time what is inevitably going to be the MVP of this video, my curling iron. I'll explain more about that later. Then it was time to get started on the doll's skin, and this step really hurt me, you guys. I love the original doll's darker skin tone, and I think it's beautiful. But Emma is very pale, so I thought if I were going to attempt to do an authentic replication, I really had to lighten her up. I did not have any other option. Once I had put down several layers of pastels to lighten up the skin tone, I got to work on the actual face up. Because this is an anime, there was a very distinctive style that I wanted to go for. Obviously, there were some allowances I was going to have to make. There is a sculpted nose on this doll, unlike the anime character, which basically just has a tiny little line. But it was a very petite nose. I thought that the mouth shape lent itself really well to the anime sort of single line style. So as I was doing the face up, basically I worked my hardest to try and do something that bridged the gap between that anime face that is so stylistic and recognizable, and something that looked good on a 3D doll sculpt. The pencil took really well on that hard plastic of the head, and it was honestly the nicest experience I've ever had doing a face up. I felt like I could really go in with some fine details to help emphasize that resemblance to Emma. Like, I blushed out her cheeks a little bit more, but with line work, the way it's done in anime. And I really feel like that helped solidify the resemblance between a 2D drawn character with what's a 3D toy in the end. When I got to the face to a place where I liked it, it was time to move on to the clothes. I used a friction pen for marking everything out because it's super easily visible and it will come off with heat. And here we get to why my curling iron was the MVP of this this video. I don't have a mini clothes iron, and I also don't have a what are they called? A flat iron. But what I do have is a curling iron, and it turns out that if you apply heat, it doesn't really matter what shape the device is that you're using to apply heat. So I got to use it for a lot of this project. Honestly, it was just so satisfying smoothing things out with the curling iron and watching those pen marks disappear. If you are unfamiliar with the Promised Neverland, the kids grow up in an orphanage and they all wear sort of industrial, same styled clothing. So Emma's skirt is just a simple pleated skirt. I cut the fabric out for it. I folded up the pleats. I got to do that satisfying thing with the iron and press all the pleats out. And then I cut out a waistband and attached that as well. I was honestly quite nervous about making the button-down shirt that all of the orphans wear. I'm not good at making human-sized button-down clothing, let alone doll-sized, but I figured nothing to do but go for it. I used the doll's original shirt to help me figure out the pattern. And then I cut that out. I originally wanted to make it all one piece because I don't like attaching fiddly little sleeves to anything, but it really wasn't going to fit properly with the sleeves all one piece. So I ended up cutting the sleeves off that I'd originally included and creating them as a separate garment piece that I could set and sew separately. I guess I totally failed to get footage of the cuffs or the collar or the placket down the front of the shirt, so go me, doing a great job. It's not great. Like I said, I'm not great at button-up shirts, but it's not terrible. I don't hate it. All in all, I'm relatively proud of myself given how difficult I find that style of shirt to do even in human size. Back to the face. I had been really pleased with the eyes, but the whites just were not popping enough once she got her white clothing on. So I went in with some acrylics and I got the whites, and then I got the pupils and the irises. And then once I'd sealed it, I covered the whole thing in dimensional Mod Podge to make them more rounded and shiny. Next, it was time for the boots. I used the doll's original boots and cut them down to be the right height for Emma's little utilitarian boots. I did not love that they had heels on them instead of being flats, but the doll has feet that are designed for high heels, so there's a limit what I can do. I put some laces on there with puffy paint, and then I set them aside for that to dry. Honestly, putting hair on dolls is one of my favorite things. It's so much fun. Every single time I start to do it, I'm like, oh my god, this is going to look terrible. And then it always looks better than I think it will in the end, and that makes me so happy. Plus, you get that magical moment when your doll has a tonsure and looks like it's a monk and you shave their head bald. I honestly loved her hair at this point, but unfortunately, it didn't look like Emma. So I had to go in and chop it up and give her short little choppy bob cut, which looks a little cray-cray right here. Back to the boots. They were dry, so it was time to paint them into an inoffensive brown color. I literally have no idea how many coats it took. A lot. The paint was not giving me good coverage. but I did them a tan color, and then I went in with darker accents on the sole and the laces, and with that she was done. So here's what we started with: our base thrifted doll, and here is what we ended up with. I'm pretty pleased with how Emma turned out, and I hope my daughter is too. Cross your fingers for me. Bye!
If you like my art, or the art of any artist here on YouTube, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help. Thanks!